Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Hub Talk Show. It is your host for the night, the one and only B Smith. It's good to be here. We meet the first Friday of the month, and guess what? It's July 1st, and it's good to see you all out there. If you're on Facebook or Facebook Live, please like, share, and tag, and tell someone to get here. The Hub is where we discuss health, finances, community, education, and politics. So tonight, we are going to be discussing domestic and family violence. We have two phenomenal guests that are from the Hampton Roads area that's going to bring us some phenomenal information. And I'm just excited about what we're going to hear. So if you're on, say hello to us so we can say hello. I'm going to read their bios and then they're going to pop on so we can see their beautiful faces, but they are ready to empower. They're also ready to educate you all on what domestic and family violence is on tonight. So I'm excited to hear what they have to say. We have questions. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat and we will fill those questions. So invite somebody, tell them, come on, get here. The Hub is started. So our first guest I have is Miss Jasmine Nelson. She is the Development and Engagement Manager. Jasmine Nelson, as the Development and Engagement Manager for Transition Family Violence Services, is a domestic violence and human trafficking nonprofit organization. Jasmine provides fundraising and engagement services for the Hampton Roads, Virginia community where she resides. Jasmine received a BS in sociology with the focus in inequality from St. Leo University. Go St. Leo. Woo-hoo. Also, she uses her degree and nonprofit experience to help develop, organize, and liberate and advocate for survivors and disenfranchised populations within her community. So we're going to be using strong words tonight as survivors, those that are disenfranchised. We're going to help those be empowered on tonight. So welcome Miss Jasmine Nelson as she comes on. As well, we have Miss Darrell Brown. She is a community advocate and she is also a survivor. So won't you guys give her a hand? She is a survivor. She is the transition family violence community advocate. She said, domestic violence, I am passionate in trying to ensure that survivors are supported and receive all resources they need to live violence-free lives. Also an advocate for diversity, inclusion, equality, and racial justice. So please welcome them to the stage tonight. Come on, ladies, you guys can join us in. Just pop right on in so we can see you here tonight as they're joining us. It is good to see them tonight. How y'all doing out there? Can y'all hear me clearly? How you doing, Mr. Rail? Good to see you, madam. They're coming on in. Miss Jasmine, are you there? You coming in? She's coming in.
I cannot start your video because the host has stopped it. So
okay. Here we go. I think there we go.
There we go.
Oh, there you go. Good to see you. Thank you. She is here tonight. It's good to see you all, ladies. And so we're just opening it up with the welcome. And it's good to see you. I know I read your bio, right? But I just want to hear something personal about who you are and anything that you like to do for fun. I know we're all professional and everything, but hey, this is just a casual conversation that we do to engage our community and our partners. So tell me something, Jasmine, tell me something funny about you or something personal that you would like to share with our audience on tonight.
Sure, let's see. There's so many things that I could say. I'm from the West Coast, so I am partial West Coast, Best Coast, although I serve, reside, and support Hampton Roads area. And I have
West Coast, like you know, like Tupac, right?
Yeah, like Tupac, like 50. That might be a little young. I don't know. Yes, absolutely. So I'm from the West Coast. I love the West Coast. I miss it, but I have made a community and such an amazing place here in the Hampton Roads area that it would be hard to leave. So that's
no problem. All right, you know the West Coast is totally different from the East Coast, but definitely you're here now, so you're you know soon, but you'll go back West Coast. So glad that you're here tonight. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So now we have Mr. Darrell Brown. Tell us just something about you. I love that you are a survivor and you love empowering people, and you're definitely an advocate. Just tell us a little bit about you tonight, so that people will know who you are.
Okay. Well, originally I'm from Washington, D.C. I came down here from New York. My thing that I love to do is I love to play in dirt. So
okay, all right. So you are a planter and gardener, so you planting seeds?
Yes.
That means we definitely got room to grow.
Yes, without a shadow of a doubt.
Now
but
I
I
do.
also just love playing in dirt, period, for real.
Well, I don't know if I'm dirty. I don't like to get my nails dirty, but I'm not good at gardening or anything, but definitely welcome, Mr. Rail. I was going to tease you because I see the bungles in the back and I heard you from New York. So I didn't know if you were, bungoing or what.
Yeah, that's my husband's. My husband
Okay.
plays the drums. So he has like a plethora of drums, for real. We have drums all over my house.
Okay, drumming. All right. So ladies, it's good to be here. And like I said, we're going to get into the topic of domestic violence and family violence. As you know, in America, violence is rising across the nation, in homes. And I definitely know there was a transition that happened probably 2 years ago, especially since the pandemic happened. That means people were at home, resources, you could not access resources like you could before. People didn't have the finances. So a lot of people were really just trapped in their home. You couldn't do anything. You couldn't go anywhere. So I know you probably may have seen a decline in phone call, maybe a decline in resources. No. Okay, Mr. L said no. So what I definitely want to open up with, and I know I don't want to confuse my audience, I want to know the difference between domestic violence and family violence. And I know we're going to do round robin. So whoever wants to jump in first can go right ahead.
Okay, so when you talk about domestic violence, and it's also referred to as intimate partner violence, so that's where you have partners. So it can be male, female, it can be same-sex relationship. So either they were in a relationship or they are still in a relationship. And it's where one partner uses power and control over another, is coercive type of behavior. So that can include physical, psychological, financial, sexual, and even spiritual abuse.
Wow, I did not know that. So when you talk about the power and control, that's overpowering the other individual. Now, right. You talked about spiritual. Can you expound on the spiritual part of that? Because I've never heard that before.
Okay, well, the spiritual part is where I tell you, you're my partner. So I say to you, you can't go to that church anymore or that place of worship. Or why are you even bothering to read that book? It's nothing. Or putting down whatever my religion is, putting it down, or telling me how stupid I am to believe in such things. When it comes to things like tithe or giving to whatever your religious affiliation is, wow. It's like, no, you can't do that because number one, I control all of the finances. So yeah, so that type of thing. And for a lot of people, their spirituality is very important to them. So if I put that down, or I don't allow you to worship as you would like to worship, then for us, that's spiritual abuse.
Wow, I did not know that. So controlling your every move, you said tithing, giving, going, your attendance, the to and from, and kind of locking you in where you cannot function and do it at your own will. Right. Now, and I know you said sexual abuse, you said spiritual abuse, and what were the other two that you mentioned?
Financial, emotional, and physical.
Okay, I definitely know physical is self-explanatory, but break down the emotional part, because I know sometimes, that's just, you get, oh, that's just how they are, or that's just how they talk, or, this is who I am, and this is how I was raised. So just give us a little bit on what emotional abuse looks like in some of these relationships.
Well, I'll go back to me and you as partners. And I talk about like how, like you're stupid, you're fat, nobody's really gonna want you. So I break down your self-esteem. I talk about how you're not gonna be able to survive without me because I'm the only person that would really love you, that type of thing. So, or I just don't talk to you, period. You want to like maybe be intimate, but no, I don't want to have anything to do with you right now, because I mean, you didn't gain weight, or you didn't lost too much weight, or you too stupid, the way you dress, like all of those things where I'm really putting you down. So I can do that either at home, or I can do it in front of other people. You know,
So
with
just
no
beating
problem.
down your self-esteem and who you
Yes.
are. So not building you up, not building up your character. Does that cause, individuals to be into themselves or become lost? Because I've heard a lot of times people say, I was just so lost, like they forgot really who they were. And so when you're talking to these survivors and they're coming to you for resources, and so what are some of the things you do to try to uplift their spirits and empower them? Because I know, as I was reading your bio, you say you advocate, you empower them, and I know you're a community advocate. So tell me, what does that really look like as being a community advocate?
Well, being a community advocate means that I work to try to inform the community in reference to what domestic violence and human trafficking is, and how the community can be a part of our mission to help to make sure that families are able to live a violence-free lives, because we envision a community that is violence-free, and we know that it can happen. But so being able to talk to a survivor and letting them know, number one, it's not your fault. Because sometimes people think that if I had only did ABC, or the abuser will tell them, if you didn't do this, then I wouldn't have to do that. So then I think that it's my fault. So being able to say to a survivor, is not your fault. And whatever resources we have available, then we'll make sure that that survivor gets it. And being in a domestic violence situation is very traumatic. So we do have trauma-informed therapists, and we also collaborate with another counseling agency that has therapists that are also males, because when we get a male survivor, of course, sometimes they don't want to have conversation with a female. So we have male therapists available for them.
And do you also, since some victims are female, do you have female therapists for them as well if they don't feel comfortable with the male? So vice versa. Ms.
Yes.
Jasmine, did you want to piggyback and say anything? I know you're the community. I mean, I know you're the development engagement, but anything you want to input at this time?
I think Ms. Darrell really covered that area. We call Ms. Darrell Miss Transitions. And she is, she never says that, but we do that because Ms. Darrell has been with the organization for decades. And so she's been able to literally see transition into what we envision now, which is a really flexible, individual based program that has no gender limitations, no religious limitations, no sexual orientation limitations. Literally anyone who is a survivor of domestic violence in those areas that she covers has a safe pathway to recover and integrate. And that for most survivors looks like a lifetime worth of resources and community building. And so a thing that we're trying to pivot to now is really not so much how can we make you be independent, how can we support you where you're at so that you can then support someone else where they're at. And we've seen that sort of model really work for us and our survivors. I know initially you were speaking about COVID, you thought maybe the calls went down. We actually saw a major increase during COVID.
Wow.
So I don't know if you can think about that time. I know in some ways I try to kind of block that time out. But at that time, most of us are in a state of not going through something similar to this. Some of us lost our jobs, so now we're having a financial burden. When you talk about human trafficking, those are some of the situations that you see family members or other friends actually trafficking their children or family members to get a source of income in because they don't have income. You're thinking then at that space, they're not in school where they are guaranteed meals, they're guaranteed a safe space, a counselor at that school. So you're taking individuals at a very intense space already. You're putting them in a confined space with limited resources. And we have found that through COVID, our needs and our survivors and the rates of violence have actually increased drastically.
Wow.
So
And you hit the
Yeah.
nail on the head with that human trafficking. I just couldn't imagine. I mean, definitely, I mean, people have to eat and they have to survive. So, and they're thinking, this is what I have to do. And I know, we were talking, but I definitely want to know if you all have some statistics you want to put out there, maybe in the Hampton Roads or nationwide, that you all know of the increase or how the data has fluctuated since, COVID or before up until this point.
Well, I think that nationally, the National Council, the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and I think they were saying that calls went up something like 21 to 30% nationwide as far as doing COVID. So I know, like in Virginia, even in 1 year, last year, I think we did like 70,000 phone calls. But when you also look at statistics nationwide, that every, one person is, 20 people are abused every minute in the United States.
Wow,
and
you
so
said 20 people
20 people
abused.
a minute.
A minute, wow.
A
So
minute.
we've been talking for 14 minutes. Wow,
So
okay.
when they calculated that, they said that calculated to almost 10 million people in a year, because that's like 1,200 people in an hour. Wow. So you're talking approximately, like I said, 10 million. When you look at 1 in 3 women in their lifetime are abused, and approximately 1 in 7 men in their lifetime are survivors or victims of abuse. And we use survivors for those who are still living. We use victims for those who have died as a result of domestic violence.
Wow, I am flabbergasted because I'm truly blown away. 20 people are abused a minute. I mean, and we've been talking now for 15 minutes. So just upon us having this conversation, the number of people that is in the totality that's taking place right then and there. Now, I do want to ask, and I think a lot of people want to know out here, is because people don't know it is hard to walk away, right? It's hard to say, let me pick up the phone, let me get these services. So that is brave. That's a strength upon strength when you pick up that phone call. So I do want to know, some victims, or I should say victims, should they stay, correct? Can you give me a little bit of feedback of why do they stay in this environment and they know they are being abused, or they may not know because they don't know all the red flags and signs, but just some feedback of why they actually stay in these situations?
Well, I mean, I think that there are understanding that domestic violence within itself is a complex situation. And so survivors have various reasons for why they stay. So one of the reasons is that understanding that when I first got into this relationship was not abusive. Now, we've been wearing masks since 2020. Abusers have been wearing masks all along. So that when we first started our relationship, the relationship was good. This person brought me flowers. They told me how beautiful I was, how much they loved me, how they couldn't live without me, like the whole 9 yards. And so survivors want the relationship. They don't want the abuse. So sometimes they stay because, and I think that sometimes we think that, oh, the abuse happens like every day, but that's not the reality. Because sometimes you might go for months without there being an abusive situation, or you might go weeks. But each time, if the person is telling you about how sorry they are and how they will never do it again and how I'm going to get help, well, okay, so I'm going to stay because number one, I don't have any money. Number two, I've been isolated from my family, so I really don't have any type of support. Number three, I grew up without a father. I don't want my kids to grow up without their father, and I think that this person is really serious about changing. So that's some of the reasons. And then it's like, okay, if I leave, where will I go? And for a lot of survivors, leaving is the most dangerous time, because me, as the person who's doing the control, I'm not going to lose my control. So if I feel like I'm about to lose my control, then I just might take you out.
So that's an escalation. And I've heard before, like, if I can't have you, nobody else can have you. And
Yes.
it's kind of that mindset. So when that victim picks up that phone, they're like, I need help. They're maybe at their last straw, their wits in or whatever. They're like, I need help. So I want you to help me identify, and Jasmine or Mr. Rail, you both can just jump in, red flags. So because some stuff you like I said, this is just how they are. This is just how they talk, and I want you to do it from the male and the woman perspective, because there are men that are abused as well. But just give me some red flags out here for the audience. I know we have a mixture of male and female, but I definitely want to hear some red flags that we need to look for and identify as well.
I mean,
one of the top ones is financial.
Okay.
Financial control. So that looks like it can start like, hey, well, I work more hours than you, so I feel like I should be in control of the money. So your check should be deposited in my bank account. It's for us anyways. You have access to it, but you just let me know how much money you need. So it looks like starting with taking away that financial aspect. So a majority of our survivors that call the hotline, our 24-hour hotline, which we'll plug in that information a little later. That's one of their major concerns and thoughts. Like, do I have to leave my job? I mean, how am I going to get money? This person has been the breadwinner or is the breadwinner, or I am working, but my name's not on the account. What does that look like? So financial is the first one. I'll leave Miss Zero the hard ones. I'm going to go with the easy ones that I know. I'm going to give her the hard.
But there was one key thing that you said, Miss Jasmine, I like it. I think it's transition and change. Because like, if this person's been the breadwinner, now I gotta find a job. I gotta go out of work, and everything is so new. I'm gonna let her give up the red flags. I did have 2 questions come in, but I'm gonna let Mr. Rail give the red flags, and then I'll jump to those questions.
Okay,
go ahead,
sure.
Mr. Rail.
Okay, I mean, I think that one of the other things is that this quick, fast, hurry, we just met each other like yesterday, and you're telling me how much in love you are with me and how you can't live without me. And realistically, you don't know me from a can of paint, and I don't know you either, but it's just like, no, we need to move in. We need to be together. And extreme jealousy. I mean, because jealousy realistically is insecurity. But when you have extreme jealousy, or always accusing you of like cheating, the isolation part, which like taking you from the West Coast to the East Coast, from the West Coast to the East Coast, so you can't be anywhere near like your family members, and then trying to control who you hang out with or who you are friends with, because realistically, we don't need nobody else. It's me and you against the world. And so you end up without a support system. I mean, I think like Jasmine said, when you look at the financial part, it's different when you and I have agreed that this is what we're going to do with money. And as you said, I have just as much right to that account as you do. But when it's like, okay, I have to account for every penny that I spend. I have to account for every mile my car has gone, because you want to know exactly where I am. You're blowing up my phone at work. You're coming past my job just to make sure that I'm there. They say one thing and mean another. You have to walk around on eggshells around that person because you don't want to upset them. Then that's not a healthy relationship.
Okay, that's good, Mr. Rail. Thank you, Ms. Jasmine, as well. So I got extreme jealousy, financial isolation period, withdrawing family support. That's huge. Getting away from your family, getting away from what you know. And it's always like, they against us, right?
Yeah.
They against us. They don't like, they just don't like me.
Right.
They don't care about me. And so it fills up your head, because it's what we're talking about. And I think we're getting to it, and I love it. It's the psychological piece of this that people don't look at, and it compounds the trauma, because now you're in this situation. Now you're psychologically second guessing yourself. And then the trauma is compounded and compounded. So I'm going to jump to the 2 questions, and then we're going to come back. So my first question that someone asked is, how do we assist the victims to free themselves?
First of all, be willing to listen and not tell a person what to do. Because for us as outsiders or bystanders, we and even us as advocates, we can see the big picture and we can kind of like know what the end of the matter will be, but the person has to make the decision. And so even at Transitions, we are client-centered. It's like, okay, the client makes the choice. The client drives the bus. We're just passengers on it. So I think that as family members, as friends, number one, listen. Number two, believe. Because sometimes when abusers are like what would be considered prominent members of society or of the community, we tend not to believe because we see that person in a different element and we can't even imagine that that person is abusive any way, shape, or form.
Wow, I did not know that. And I like what you said. You said you allow the client to drive it. That's empowering them. So they lost control and now you all are giving them back control. And so you're like, I'm here and I'm going to be here to support you, but you're going to drive this train. The other question that we did have, are the services free that you all offer? Are they free? Okay, they are free. Yes, so all the services are free. And then I think I had one more if I missed it. They said, so they stay because there's no options available. There are some options available. I know it varies from state to state, but just give us again the options that you all offer here in Hampton Roads area.
Sure. So Transitions is going on this year. It's 45th year. So we are so excited about that. Service, we're the only domestic violence service in our area that does completely comprehensive services. So that means the minute a survivor calls our 24-hour hotline to the minute that they enter into one of our programs that fits them best, everything is free of charge. That goes from the food that they and their children that they may or may not have eat, hygiene, clothes, shelter, job assistance, counseling services, court advocacy. That's a big one. So I know people, are thinking like, oh, well, I mean, there are resources out there. Why would someone go back? But if you can even think about your first time even being fully equipped in a new space, a new job, that's like saying someone coming onto site and being like, well, you've been working your whole life. Why don't you know how to get right into this job? Statistics show that survivors go back to their abuser 7 times. So in our head already, we are prepared. That doesn't matter if they come into us at what we would consider some of the worst conditions. It's a cycle, it's a process that we're here to support them through, right? So if we get them the first 5 times and they're like, I'm really gonna do it, and they don't do it, we aren't, we're not on the other line saying, hey, you utilize these services and you said last time you didn't. It's like, continue to come back as many times as it takes, because it literally takes one time for you to get out of that space and liberate yourself. So we're the only one that does comprehensive services like that. So I'm really proud of Transitions for that.
Because a lot of times some services only allow you to come a certain amount of times, and you can't come back as many times.
Right.
So that's really good.
Sure. Yeah. So we heavily depend on our community for donations. We heavily depend on our community for support. That looks like volunteering. That looks like fundraising. That looks like even just spreading the word, honestly, about our services. That looks like looking at domestic violence differently and survivors differently. Not putting them in a box, not thinking that they look a certain way. We have survivors who are at some of the top positions that you would look and be like, wow, this individual is so beautiful. There's no way that they're in a system, and they are. So whatever way that the community can healthily plug into Transitions and support, we need it, the survivors need it, and our community needs it. So hopefully we'll be able to plug that information and spread out.
Wow. So you said donations, fundraising, volunteers, nonprofit organization, time. Do you all do training? Do you come out and train professionals and different things like that? Definitely. I know this is ministry meets community, but I wanted to know about it from the church perspective. I know you touched on it in the beginning, but I think being aware, the church community being aware, these are things that are happening within the church. These people are in your community, they're coming to church, and so these things are happening. So Jasmine said, now Now, those that are out there, nonprofit organizations, think about this. If you guys can provide donations, if you can volunteer, fundraising, any type of donations, and I believe the person they would contact would be you, Jasmine, correct? Okay, at the end of this, she's going to give us her information. We'll put it in the chat so you guys can touch bases with her to see how you can definitely be a support. Now, I did hear you earlier speak on court advocacy. What does that look like, and why would a victim need some type of court advocacy? What does that entail?
Well, it entails one of our court advocates being in court with a survivor for support. So if a survivor decides that they want to get a protective order, and that's not something that we require, it's on the survivor. So if they decide they want to get a protective order, then we have court advocates to go with them to show them like, okay, this is what the process looks like. Or if their trial has come up, then the court advocate is going with them to sit in court with them so that they know that they're not alone.
Okay. That's amazing. And that's another level of support. Now you said keywords. Now I know what a protective order is. Just give a little bit of explanation on a protective order. And I believe when you all do this protective order, you can also, if they have children, the protective order can carry the children as well to protect them, correct?
That would depend on the judge, whether
Okay.
or not the children would be on the protective order. So you can get a protective order for a 72-hour protective order and then go back to court to get hopefully a longer protective order. So people have gotten protective orders for 2 years, a year. We've even had someone that got a lifetime protective order.
Okay. And that protective order is very different than something you would say stalking. That is very different. I believe they could get jail time and criminal time if they violate that protective order, correct? Mm-hmm. All right. And then I had, somebody did have a question. I know, Jasmine, you mentioned donations. Someone asked what type of donations are needed? Anything specifically, or go ahead, Jasmine.
No, that's a good question. So Mrs. Darrell asked, because my go-to always, and I say this in such a kind way, but it really is, it's money. It's money, okay. It's gift cards. It's because our survivors are so specific that it's hard to say. And in general, I can say cleaning supplies. I can send out a list and give you things. We always need cleaning supplies, laundry baskets, face masks, things that are typical like that. But the most impact are things like gift cards that they can go and get things that fit them, that fit their specific needs, their children's specific needs. That looks like bus passes because our transportation system here is not the best. That looks like Instacart gift cards so that they can get groceries actually to their doorstep if they're uncomfortable going out in public.
Or no transportation if they have no transportation.
That looks like a gas card. We know gas is going up for everybody, but that looks like that. That can be the difference between that survivor going to an interview, that survivor picking their child up. I mean, so those sort of things are my top that I really like to lean into. And I know that there may be not some donors may not feel like they're the most personal, but they have the most personal effect. So that's my first thing. Then if it's like, no, I'm a person who, likes to put packages together, then I can work individually. And I do have a general list that I can send out. That list typically changes quarterly because our survivors change so often that I don't want to take needs and donations that are just going to sit. We're really intentional about taking a donation, that going right to that survivor being able to use that, and us not holding on to things that our community could be using.
Okay,
so
that's great.
I'm welcome to send out a list on our website. We do have general information of things that we're looking for. And again, that's like the cleaning supplies, which, we always go through, things of that nature. So
Jasmine, give me your, I know you mentioned your website. Give us your website so the audience will know your website.
Sure. We are called, again, we're Transitions Family Violence Services, and the website is www.transitions, TRANSITIONS, 3 letters, the letter F for family, the letter V for violence, the letter S for services.org.
Okay.
So it's transitionsfvs.org.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. And
Thank
then we
you.
had another question. I think that's amazing because I know sometimes, let me give you this quilt. No, they don't need this quilt. They need these gas cards. They need this Instacart. They need them Target cards. They need them bump beds. I know I'm good at making these quilts. I'm just joking, you guys. I'm just teasing. But definitely, Miss Nelson, definitely, she has a list and also on their website. And then we had one question here about, can you get, I don't know if this may be a little bit detailed, but I don't know. But can you get a protective order weeks/month after an incident has occurred?
And that I do not know that question. I mean, I do not know that answer. I know that you do have some leeway as far as time frame to go ahead and ask for a protective order, but I don't know definitely. And that's something that one of our court advocates would be able to answer better.
Okay. So we can link, if they go on your website or they could call in, you can link them to one of your court advocates and maybe they can assist. Okay. So that person, get the information. We can definitely touch bases with one of their court advocates. And I definitely want them to get the information if it's definitely needed, because it may be helpful to them. So we're gonna transition a little bit. Thank you all. Thank you both. The information has just been great, and we've already been talking 30 minutes. I know this could go probably for at least 2 hours, but you guys are so phenomenal. I do want to talk about change. And I know, you've been in this relationship, there's these victims, and then there's these survivors, but I definitely want to know, is it possible for abusers to change? And if so, what does that look like? Or do you all provide any type of service to help abusers? I know you're helping the victim, but are there anything for the abusers as well?
Well, the Center for Child and Family Services does have a group. I think they still have a batterers group. And there are groups throughout the United States in reference to those who would do harm or abusers. Can a person change? Yes, if a person wants to change. But that's the operative word, that I really do want to change. So it's not just about being court ordered into a batterers group. It's about me realizing that I do have a problem. And so when I have been able to utilize power and control all of this time, it's hard to give up control. And so I have got to want that as much as I want the air that I breathe. I mean, it's just like people who are court ordered into Alcoholics Anonymous, and they go, they get the chips, they sit there, they listen, and then they leave out and they go get a drink. So if I'm not invested in change, then I will not change.
So you're talking about the show up mentality. So when you think about domestic violence, you're thinking about this is an actual in the mindset. You got to keep it like an addiction. You got to keep that in the mindset, because I can show up and go to the Center for Child and Family Services. I can go to the batters group and I can get my stuff signed out. But then in the next couple of months, I can be back doing the same thing. But you all are saying that abusers can change, but they have to want to change. And I identify and show that changed behavior. Now, go ahead, go, Ms.
No, I was going to say, because maybe I go to, maybe I'm court ordered to go to the batterer intervention group. And so after I've done that group for X amount of time and I get my little paperwork signed, as you said, then I come back home and maybe I never put my hands on you. Maybe after that, I never ever touch you. But then when I start with the verbal abuse, and the difference is that verbal abuse, and like you said, the emotional abuse, that's long-standing. If I hit you, yes, there's a mark and that can heal. But when I put you down day after day or week after week, then that's like an inside, that's like cutting my whole spiritual self, my whole soul. So yeah, I never put my hands on her, never.
And so, go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, verbal and emotional abuse is a little bit harder to prove.
And that's what I was going to say. It's part of the proof, but I really believe that people do not believe they are being verbally and emotionally abused in these relationships. I believe they think like, oh, that's just how they talk, or that's just how he or she is. Because I know now, because you have educated me, that there are male and female victims out there. So they're like, this is just how they are. But this is a daily traumatic experience that they are taking on a daily basis. And I have to go back to what Miss Jasmine said earlier. It takes a victim almost 7 times to really leave. And so I know in domestic violence, there is something called the cycle of violence, right? So I want you all to talk a little bit about the cycle and kind of what the cycle look like. I know it looks a little bit like the red flags, but it's actually a cycle, and you can find yourself anywhere on this cycle, correct? So just go ahead, Mr. Rell or Miss Jasmine, jump in. Who wants to talk about that cycle of violence that you see?
Well, I mean, the cycle is like, it almost looks like a, it looks just like that, a circle, a cycle. So you might have where everybody in the house, including the kids, because everybody knows when the abuser comes home, regardless of whether it's male or female, when things are about to explode. So everybody's walking around on eggshells. And if you try this, you can take some eggshells, put them on the floor, walk on them, and try to keep from breaking them. And you'll see that that's an impossibility. So it's the same thing. Everybody's walking around trying to not upset this person, but it doesn't matter what I do, the person is going to be upset. So if the issue yesterday was that I didn't cook the eggs the way that they wanted them, and then this morning I cooked them exactly as you asked me, but then it's another issue. And so then there's the explosive situation. So whether or not that's a physical situation, or whether I'm cursing you out and telling you how no good and good for nothing you are. And then after that, I'm crying, or I'm telling you about how sorry I am and how I will never do it again. But if you hadn't did this, then I wouldn't have had to do this. I'm still not taking accountability for my behavior.
So it's you made me do this. If you wouldn't have had to did this, wow.
Then I would not have had to slap you. I would not have had to curse you out. I wouldn't have had to do any of that if you had just did ABC, whatever ABC looks like. And then later on, after I have cried and told you about how sorry I am, then I might bring you flowers, I might bring you chocolate, I might bring you some Chinese food, anything that I think is gonna be like, okay, baby, you can see that I'm sorry. And then everything might be good for a minute. And then it starts again.
Wow. So just imagine you're on this cycle. It's going, and then you're back on the cycle again. Go ahead, Miss Jasmine, you were gonna jump in.
Yeah, no, Ms. Daryl does a really good way of breaking it down. But, you know, the cycle, and it can happen really quick too, which is why I think that some people have a hard time engaging. I mean, if you grew up in an environment where maybe that's typical that you guys raise your voice at one another, or you deal with conflict in a tension building way, then you may think, well, my parents, like, this is normal. And then you move to the incident or the abuse of violence. And then you're like, well, they just pushed me, we were heated, and then you go down to reconciliation where it's like, okay, I love you, next time we're not going to do that, and then it's a calm, right? So sometimes I know, even in situations that I think back out that aren't abusive, but I think back, they happen so quick by the time my brain recognizes that my mouth has said something that may offend somebody. Even I'm not even saying abusive, but they may offend somebody. Then there's a cycle of like having to go back and unlearn some behaviors. So a lot of these things aren't things that I think are so easily diagnosed in just a general platform, right? Because we all have childhood traumas, we all have different childhoods that we grow up with. So if that individual, whether it be a male identifying or female identifying, grew up in a home where some of these things are typical, it can be very hard for them to even think that they're being abused, because that's what they're used to, that's what their parents are used to, their grandparents. And so it's a lot of unlearning and relearning that I think that we really try to advocate for with our survivors.
Wow. And you hit the nail on the head. I didn't even think about the childhood trauma. So if you've always been taught to this way, your life, you're thinking this is how I'm supposed to talk to this individual. So you have not unlearned that behavior.
Right.
So basically this abuser has to unlearn this behavior. Then they have to identify how to talk to an individual, how to engage with them. Because for some of, and I know we're African-American, and I think sometimes in the African-American culture, you know, as we get in a fight, we all just gonna go out to dinner, you know. We're gonna go out to dinner, or I'm gonna buy you something, and you know, we're gonna be good. But talking about it, and I think what you both are saying, you have to actually have this conversation. You need to talk about these issues. And then I know sometimes like, you know, kids start saying, no, you need to be quiet. No, these kids need to learn how to express themselves, because you don't want it to be when they become adults. And now they're telling their significant, no, you just need to shut up, or you just need to be quiet. And so that's what happened. It's learned behavior. And so now all of these things have to be unlearned. I think that's great. You guys are just giving some great information on tonight. Go ahead, Mr. Rell, I see you.
No, I was going to say, because I know you said that, especially because when we look at teens, because we also deal with teen dating violence. Mm-hmm. And so unfortunately, you have teens that are like, you know, 12, 13 years old that are in relationships that are abusive. And so they don't see that, because we have not taught what healthy relationships look like. We need to be talking about these issues. We need to be talking about domestic violence. We need to be talking about human trafficking. We need to be talking about sexual assault. But these are conversations that we do not have. Domestic violence is like, okay, what happens in the home stays in the home. That's not a reality, because it spills out into the street. It affects our community. You know, so when you're looking at means of people being affected, and that's just the grown folk that's being affected. And as Jasmine said, if you have children in the house, then they're also being affected. And so that's trauma, you know. But if we don't talk about it, and especially, I'll go back to what you said about the church needs to talk about it. We need to have conversation, you know, because when you look at when you also look at the spiritual abuse, you look at where people say, like in Ephesians, you know, wives, submit to your husbands. But they forget the one that's under that say, husbands, love your wives, even as Christ loved the church, that he gave his life.
That's right.
So as a man, as a husband, are you willing to give up anything for this person who's your partner?
Yeah, you're right. Thank you, Mr. Rell. I think you just put everything in perspective. Even with the teen, I didn't think about that. And now with the ever-growing social media, you know, I mean, it's so many things, bullying on social media, even the sexual abuse of luring people out and children out. But I didn't even think about those teen dating relationships that are so abusive as well, and how these children are talking to each other. It's learned behavior. So to the audience out there, I hope you guys are enjoying this segment with Ms. Jasmine, Mr. Rell. They're giving a lot of information. I do have one question for you all, okay? Does the one who is being abused have to unlearn childhood as well? So I guess the abuser, right? I think I'm getting that right. Does the one who is being abused have to unlearn childhood as well? So I'll let either one of you guys jump in.
So I think the question is, does the survivor also have to unlearn some behaviors? Yeah, right. I think we're all unlearning, if we're being honest, right? Even I would say at my most healthiest space, I would still like to think that I'm unlearning things, because I'm changing and I'm interacting differently with that. So I would think that the survivors piece, and Ms. Darrell can really touch this too, would be unlearning what you deserve, right? So maybe some people think that they deserve to be talked to a certain way, to be treated a certain way. So you're unlearning that your worth isn't based upon what you can provide. We're not a utility. We are something to be, you know, shared in community with. We're something to be respected and loved with on all levels, regardless of what you can or cannot bring. So yeah, I would like to think that we're all doing that piece of unlearning childhood behaviors, traumas, what we can accept, what we won't accept. I know personally myself, what I thought at 18, I
Mhm.
bought it, but I thought 18 was like, oh, I could do this forever. I quickly learned that's not that, right? And so that looks like, okay, Jasmine, maybe in that space, that's where you are. But now that you're in a different space, what does that look like? And that's a process too. So we talk about a lot of patience amongst our survivors. We talk a lot of patience amongst one another and a lot of patience with ourselves as we too may or may not be triggered as we interact with some of these survivors, because we also are humans. We as advocates in this space are also a lot of us are survivors that work in this field. We're passionate about liberating and a path to safety, but that doesn't mean that we also are completely healed in all areas. So I would hope that everybody would unlearn and seek that piece of support.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have to unlearn it. Go ahead, Mr. Red, but definitely you have to unlearn those behaviors. Yeah.
No, I agree with exactly what, both of you saying, that you do have to unlearn. And especially if you have been put down as a child, if you are a survivor of child abuse, and then you end up as a survivor of intimate partner violence, so there are things you have to unlearn your unworthiness and learn your worthiness.
And I think you just hit the nail on the head. A lot of people don't know their worthiness, so they're trying to learn it. And I think a lot of times, I mean, you all probably spending maybe in the trauma therapy and definitely spending that time building your self-worth. Building your self-worth, using those words and empowering them, and the support. I mean, it just takes so much support. And even when Miss Jackson said patience, support, empowerment, because I know sometimes you're working, you're like, oh my gosh, it can become a little bit of frustration in our humanity. But I think in your heart, I know, and I'm talking to know Miss Darrell, being a survivor, you've been there, you've come out of it, and it's just so amazing. So we applaud you on that, and overcoming all that you've been through. But just saying, I'm going to make this change and I'm going to come out of it, it's just been amazing. So I do have a question for you all. I think we have one more question here. The other one, how does, and I know we talked a little bit about, how does this affect our community with domestic violence, and how does it affect our economy? So anyone want to jump in on that?
I mean, I think that when you think about our community, yes, it because it affects all of us. If someone ends up murdered as a result of domestic violence, then what have we lost as a community? A couple of years ago, 22-year-old was murdered by her boyfriend, who had great aspirations. So as a community, we lost a very bright light, and it's no telling what she could have accomplished. But then when you look at the economy, if you have survivors who can't go to work because they are bruised, I think that when they looked at the amount that it costs our economy, it was like billions of dollars, because survivors either can't go to work, they lost their job because their partner is steady calling them or is steady showing up when people have to go to the hospital, and if they don't have insurance, dental insurance for knocked out teeth. So there's like a whole, it definitely affects our economy. And I know that people think that, well, okay, if somebody is living in poverty, then they are more likely to be abused than someone who has money. That's not the reality. So being in poverty does not create domestic violence. The difference is, if I have money, then that means that I can go someplace else. I can get on a plane and fly from the East Coast to the West Coast. Or to another country if I got enough money. And I think that one of the things that I also look at is that when you have like cases like, Jane that lives down the street, or, Jessica or John, like a couple of blocks over, they don't get the headlines that high profile. We just had the basketball player who's part of the Hornet basketball team. And so he
I think Mikhail Bridges or something. I think it was Mikhail Bridges.
He just got arrested for domestic violence assault. And his wife, what his partner said was, that's it. I am not keeping silent anymore. You know, she said, that's it. She said, I'm not going to do this to my kids and do it to myself. So she talked about, but it's front page on the internet. But like
but Julie 3 doors down, she don't got the same.
Yeah, she's not getting no press. She's not getting no press.
Yeah.
The only time she might get some press is if she die.
And so, and you know, the hardest part, you know, thinking about that, because that's the only time a victim is getting press is they have to pass away. That does something to me, because this is a community issue. This is not just like, oh, this is just Hampton Roads or this is just Virginia. No, this is a community issue, and we cannot keep silent. And I know a lot of times that and say I know someone, you help me. I know someone that's a victim. I know they're going through. I know we talked a little bit about how do I support that person? What do I need to do? Do I need to call y'all? What is it that I need to do to help that person or support them? Because I don't want it to be that Julie is on the front page and I knew about this. And I went to sleep and I woke up and I know this has been going on for 10 years now or 5 years. I'm just throwing out a number. Right. But what can I do? You know, what is it that I need to do?
That's so tricky for me. That's a tricky advice, because there's difference, right? I feel, and I think even when we talk, Ms. Darrell feels, and a few of our other advocates feels, that we do have the tools to intervene in a real life domestic violence situation. For example, we're passing someone, we see somebody being hit or abused, we would think that we are trained enough to have the tools to intervene in some way, whether that's to call somebody, call the authorities. I personally have mixed feelings about that, but I'll leave that there. That's an option to do that.
I understand.
And so I think we feel that way, but we had a case here in Hampton Roads about a year and a half ago where someone did intervene, and two cases, one in Norfolk, one was here in Hampton. They did intervene and they were casualties because of that, because of they're in a real life scenario. So sometimes that's not the safest space if you're not trained, if you don't know how to maybe walk through a case or a scenario. Then a lot of times you may find that the survivor in that case, because they're so conditioned to support that, they may actually come against you as well and say, I'm not being abused. You can see that's happening. So it's tricky to say, like, right away intervene. But what you can absolutely do if you're in our area, and there is a national crisis hotline, is give that information, slip that card, you call yourself. We do have to talk to the survivor, but you call yourself and get the information set up like, hey, I saw this happening. I don't feel comfortable calling the authorities, or I did call the authorities. I just want to follow up with this. So I think a good resource is passing along on all of our cards. We have a 24-hour hotline number, and then there is a national crisis hotline number that people can call if they see incidences occur. And then, in some cases, if it's something that is just out of your hands and you feel comfortable, then I would say calling the authorities. And we have a relationship with multiple of the local police departments where we trade information, we trade resources. So in that way, I think that's good. But I would say definitely don't be silent about it, but that doesn't mean initially intervene. That does look like giving our 24-hour hotline and or calling the authorities, and maybe following up with what happened with that individual.
And you're basically saying, be smart, you intervene, but be smart about it. You're not taking ownership of this. This is not, you're not getting in it, but be smart. Use the resources that you all provided. So great information tonight, ladies. I know we only got a couple minutes left. I'm going to see if there's any more questions, if the audience have any more questions. I'm just going to give you a couple minutes. I got a couple of announcements to make, but if you guys have any questions for Ms. Darrell or Ms. Jasmine, put them in the chat. I definitely want to get them. But before I give you guys a couple moments before I come with my announcements, give them you all's telephone number and also that national phone number that we can put out there and they can put in the chat for you. Okay,
so the national hotline is 1-800-799-7233.
Repeat that one more time for the Miss Daryl, okay?
It's 800-799-7233.
7233. Okay.
All
And
right, 24.
Go
Yeah.
ahead, Miss Jasmine.
Transitions 24-hour crisis hotline number is 757-723-7774.
Say it one more time so they can have it, Miss Jasmine.
Transitions, our agency, Transitions Family Violence Services, 24-hour crisis hotline number is 757-723-7774.
Okay, thank you, Miss Jasmine. I'm just gonna give you guys a moment, just a few seconds break here while I give some announcements. But just the audience out there, please, please, please go ahead and give Miss Jasmine and Miss Darrell a hand. They did a phenomenal job tonight. I'm just so amazed by the information that they shared with us tonight. So if you guys want some additional information, please reach out to them so they can assist you. If you're looking to help somebody and assist them, as they said, be smart, but give them the information. As always, we want to thank our partners, our leaders, our sponsors, our House of God Worship Center, our guests, and our viewers. Now, as you guys know, House of God Worship has this ministry called Random Acts of Kindness, and you can donate. And we have the ways to give that are down below. And I heard Ms. Jasmine talk about the things that transition needs, and we want to be a support to them. So tonight, if you all feel led, the ways to give, I hope they're posted down there. But all you got to do is in the Cash App, put RAC 22, because we want to support the transitions. I mean, I want to say the domestic violence shelter, but it's not domestic. It's the transitions.
Family Violence Services.
Family Violence Services. And so if you guys can donate RAC 22, just something, if you could give something today, it's $ HOG-06. Just give something led from your heart tonight to be a support to these beautiful women and all the work they're doing in the Hampton Roads area. And we want to continue to do those things. Just a few announcements. Join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for Jumpstart, and also on Sunday morning at 10:50, and Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 a.m. where we continue to pray without ceasing. Also, this next week, we have our funnel cake frenzy on July the 9th. So Jasmine and Miss Darrell, come on out to 7400 Warwick Boulevard from 2 to 6 to get you a funnel cake. I'm telling y'all would love it. And come out and support. If you would like to volunteer, just let me know. As well as join us every Sunday morning at 2510. That's our second location. I mean, our first location, Build America Drive at 11 a.m. for our Sunday morning service. So we thank our sponsors, we thank our viewers, and we thank you for your support. I know a little bit over time, but I'm going to bring Miss Jasmine, I'm going to bring Miss Darrell back. And if you guys just want to share some words of an empowerment with our audience before they go, and then we will see them next month for the hub. I hope you guys enjoy tonight as I bring Miss Jasmine and Miss Darrell back. Amen. Look, I'm saying
out. She's our peace and love. I'm more of that like hook. Thank you for promoting. Thank you guys for listening to us. Our community really, really depends on you guys. Your financial contributions, your donation, your thoughts, spreading the word, all of those things. And we're just grateful that we get to do this. I personally feel grateful that I get to do something I'm passionate about every single day. And I get to go and just think that I'm making an impact anyway in anyone's lives. I take that as an honor. So I love what I do. I'm already thanking you guys in advance for all of the support that I know you guys will provide and at least keep us in our thoughts. And until next time, because I'm sure there will be one.
Thank you, Ms. Jasmine. Okay, Mr. Rao, anything that you would like to add?
I would just like to remind survivors that the abuse is not your fault. And you're not alone. So there are services out there. There are people out there who are willing to support you and encourage you, and encourage the audience to have conversations about domestic violence. There's a saying that silence encourages violence. So when you don't speak about it, it's not like it's going to go away. When we don't speak about it, basically, we are endorsing it. So we need to not co-sign on it.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Rell. I enjoyed you all so much.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. We will see you all next month. I've definitely enjoyed tonight and definitely hearing from everyone. Go ahead and continue to make your donations. They have put the information down below. Just in the comments, put RAK22. The ways to give is Cash App, $HOG06. So I will see you all next month. And thank you so much, Miss Jasmine. Thank you so much, Mr. Real. You all have a great night, and we'll see you next week. Next month. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.